y'all! So today I'm going to be doing the 2014 reading tag. I wasn't tagged by anyone to do this, but I thought it seemed like fun and it was a good way to kind of wrap up my 2014 reading year, so I decided to go ahead and do it. I will leave links to the creator down in the description as well. Also, the rules specify that you can list as many books as you want for each question, so that should help me out because I am a very indecisive person. And just as a side note, I'll be choosing books and characters among the ones that I read for the first time this year. I'm excluding rereads because, again, like I've said in other videos, that would just be unfair to all the amazing books that I read this year because Harry Potter is my favorite series and I just choose everything from Harry Potter. So, excluding rereads. Just books that I read for the first time this year. Question number 1 is, what is your favorite book that was published in 2014? And for this one, I'm definitely going to have to go with City of Heavenly Fire by Cassandra Clare. I love Cassandra Clare's books, and even though this one isn't my favorite in the Mortal Instruments series, it is definitely my favorite book that was released in 2014. I really loved it. I thought it was so much fun and a great conclusion to the series. Question number 2 is, pick a book that you read this year that had great characterization. For this one, I'm definitely going to have to go with The Diviners by Libba Bray. The Diviners is one of those books that has a big cast of characters, and I feel like Libba Bray did a really excellent job of making each one really unique. None of them got confused in my mind or ran together. They were just all very unique characters, and I really appreciated that. Question number 3 is, speaking of favorite characters, who is the favorite character you read in a book this year? And this is a toughie because I read all of Cassandra Clare's books this year. I reread the first 4 books in the Mortal Instruments series this year, and I also read the last 2 books of the Mortal Instruments series and the entire Infernal Devices trilogy for the first time this year. So I had a lot of characters to choose from. So I decided to kind of cop out a little bit and choose a character from a book that I read for the first time this year, but it wasn't the first time I'd read the series. And I chose Jace from the Mortal Instruments series. I hold the very unpopular opinion of preferring Jace over both Jim and Will from the Infernal Devices series. And I'm okay with that. I feel like Jace is like the perfect combination of Will and Jim. And I absolutely love Jace. So yeah, Jace is probably my favorite character that I read in a book this year. But since I'm allowed to choose multiple, I'm also going to say how much I love Magnus Bane. I love Magnus Bane. He's probably my favorite after Jace. And of course I do love Jim and Will, but those two are my absolute favorites. Going along the same train, question number 4 is, who is your least favorite character in a book that you read this year? And I'm about to get a lot of hate for this, but I don't care. I do not like Looking for Alaska. It was my least favorite book that I read in 2014, and it was mostly because of the characters. I really don't like Alaska, and I really don't like our main character, Pudge. I just don't like the characters in this book. I kind of liked the Colonel, but that was as close as I got to liking one of the characters in this book. I just don't like Alaska or Pudge, along with the majority of the characters in the book, but those were the 2 that I hated the most. Question number 5 is to pick a book that you read this year that had a really surprising plot twist. Now, I didn't read a ton of books this year that had really surprising plot twists, partially because I had been spoiled for several books that I read this year, which is not cool. But I think the one that had the most plot twists that I wasn't expecting has to be A Million Suns by Beth Revis, which is the second book in the Across the Universe trilogy. I really, really loved the Across the Universe trilogy, but it was A Million Suns that made me completely fall in love with it. There were just so many secrets that were discovered within this book, and it was just like twisting all over the place. So it wasn't really necessarily like one huge big plot twist. There were just constant plot twists that were being thrown into the mix, and I just really loved that about this book. If you haven't read the Across the Universe trilogy yet, and you like sci-fi or dystopian or mystery, I would really suggest that you read it because it is just so amazing. I absolutely love it. Question number 6 is to name a great author or multiple authors that you discovered this year. I think for me, I'm going to have to choose Ernest Cline. because for a lot of the books that I read this year, the only reason I'm still really interested in the books that the author writes is because they're continuing a series or because they're continuing a world like Cassandra Clare's Shadowhunter world, and it's less about the author than it is about the books that they're writing. But for Ernest Cline, I feel like I would just read any book that he would write, even though I've only read one of his books so far. Yeah, so far all of his books have to deal with like nerdy stuff and dystopians and geek culture, but at the same time, it's still a completely different world and completely different characters, and I'm still really interested to read his book Armada that's coming out this year, and I have a feeling that I'm really gonna like any other books he comes out with. So I'd have to say, for authors that I discovered in 2014, Ernest Cline is right up there at the top. I also think that Beth Revis is another great writer that I discovered this year, because like I just mentioned, I loved her Across the Universe trilogy. And she has another book out that sounds really, really interesting and I really want to get my hands on. So I feel like I will really enjoy a lot of her books in the future. So I'd have to say Ernest Cline and Beth Revis are the two that I discovered that I think I'm really going to enjoy in the future. Question number 7 is, what book did you read in 2014 that you thought actually met the hype? And I know I just talked about this on the last question, but I have to throw it in there. Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. A lot of people were talking about this book in 2014 on BookTube, and everyone was saying how much they loved it and how amazing it was, and that was what pushed me to read it. And I gotta say, it was out of the books that I was persuaded to read by booktubers, that was definitely the one that I was the most impressed with. It was just really, really great. Question number 8 is, did you see any book-to-movie adaptations in 2014? And if so, what was your favorite? And it adds the stipulation on there that it doesn't have to be a book or movie that came out in 2014. So I obviously rewatched the Harry Potter movies several times throughout the year, but the only ones I saw for the first time were Divergent and The Fault in Our Stars, because I only recently read the Hunger Games trilogy. I know, scandal. And so I didn't read it in time to watch Mockingjay before the end of the year, which I still need to do because I have only seen the Hunger Games movie. I haven't seen the other two. So yeah, the only ones that I actually saw for the first time in 2014 were The Fault in Our Stars and Divergent. And I have to say that between the two, The Fault in Our Stars was definitely better. I didn't think Divergent was a bad adaptation, but The Fault in Our Stars movie was just so good. It's one of the best book-to-movie adaptations I've ever seen. Question number 9 is, what book made you cry the most? And if you've seen some of my previous videos, you probably already know what I'm going to say. And that is Clockwork Princess by Cassandra Clare. Oh man, this book. I was either tearing up or crying for about half of the book. I just absolutely loved it. I thought it was the best conclusion that could have happened for the end of the Infernal Devices trilogy. I just really loved it, and I spent a lot of the book crying. So definitely Clockwork Princess by Cassandra Clare. Question number 9 is, what is the funniest book that you read in 2014? And it took me a while to figure out a book because I didn't really read any like outwardly funny books in 2014. I mean, obviously the books that I read had humor in them or else they wouldn't be interesting at all. But I couldn't think of any books that just made me laugh out loud constantly. And then I remembered that I read all of Cassandra Clare's books this year. And so I had to go with City of Heavenly Fire. If you've seen my top 14 of 2014 video, you will have seen that I have a ton of like little sticky notes in my copy of City of Heavenly Fire. And all of those are either just like really cute moments or moments that make me cry, or most commonly, really, really funny moments. And so I'd have to say that City of Heavenly Fire was the funniest book that I read this year. Question number 11 is, did you set a reading goal for 2014? And if so, did you complete it? And how many books did you read? I kind of set a reading goal for 2014. At the beginning of 2014, I was not yet on Goodreads, and I had only started watching BookTube videos, like maybe less than a month before. So I was kind of just getting into the world of BookTube and reading a lot. And my only real reading goal was to read a book a month, which I obviously surpassed. And to do this summer reading challenge that I came up with, which was to reread the Cassandra Clare books that I had already read and then read the ones that I hadn't read all in May, reread the Harry Potter series in June, and to reread the Pendragon series in July. And I completed that. So on top of that, as the year went on, I kind of changed the number of books that I wanted to read on Goodreads more to match the books that I wanted to finish by the end of the year rather than just the set number. So by the end of the year, I had read 58 books. However, 3 of those I don't really count because 2 of them were novellas and one of them was an analysis of Harry Potter that I read alongside Order of the Phoenix. So technically I read 58, but I'm gonna cap it off at 55 because those were the actual books that I completed because I don't really count novellas and random analyses. I don't know why, I'm weird. I just wanted to count the normal novels that I read. So 55, 58, in that ballpark. Question number 12 is, were you satisfied with 2014 as a reading year? And yes, really satisfied. I read a lot when I was younger, and it tapered off into high school and was almost non-existent in college. And then 2014 hit, and I started reading a lot because I had discovered BookTube, and I'd gotten on Goodreads, and I'd set all these goals for myself. And so reading 58 books in a year, or 55, is a big accomplishment. Like, I didn't read 58 books in probably like the 5 years leading up to 2014. So yeah, I consider 2014 to be a huge reading success for me. Question number 13 is, what are you planning to do differently or better in 2015? And I think the main thing that I want to do, although I can't really control this very well, is that I don't want to have any reading slumps in 2015. I didn't read a single book in September of 2014, and I just didn't feel like reading, and that makes me really sad. I want to read consistently throughout 2015. Maybe not at the rapid fire pace that I was reading at the beginning of the year, but I definitely want to like consistently be reading something. I don't feel like I need to rush myself. I don't want to feel rushed, but I just want to be reading throughout the entire year and hopefully not have a slump. Another thing I want to do a little bit differently is, first of all, to buy less books. One of my resolutions for 2015 is to only buy the number of books that I read. So since I'm planning to read 50 books in 2015, that means I'm only allowed to buy 50 books in 2015, which will be a bit of a challenge for me. So hopefully I can do that. Going along with that, I want to do more, not really research into a book, but I want to pay more attention to the books that I'm reading and only really read books that I know I'm really gonna enjoy. I went into a few books kind of blind in 2014, which is fine, but I ended up getting something that I wasn't really expecting and didn't quite like so much. And I didn't really pay too much attention to my own likes and dislikes with books, and instead was focusing on, a booktuber said this was really great. So I feel like I just need to focus more upon thinking about what I will actually like and only read books that I feel like I will really enjoy, rather than ones that BookTube says are really amazing. And the last question, question number 14, is, what is the best book or books that you read in 2014? And I gave, I think, 7 books 5 stars in 2014. I'm not super picky with my 5 stars, but I do like to be pretty selective with it. But I think that there were 3 books in 2014 that really stood out above all of the other ones that I read in 2014. And starting with number 3, that was Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. Number 2 was The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. And number 1 was Clockwork Princess by Cassandra Clare. I read a lot of good books in 2014, but those 3 were the ones that I think will be among my all-time favorites for a really long time. So there you go, that was the 2014 reading tag. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know down in the comments what your favorite books of 2014 were and maybe what you plan on doing better as a reader in 2015. Thanks for watching. Bye! So I'd have to say that for authors I discovered in Ernest Cline. Okay. What is with my voice today? I'm not sick. I don't know why my voice is... Okay. No, what am I saying? I don't even know what I'm saying. In high school or in college. And, well, the first 2 years of college. I'm still in college. But I'm babbling. Question numbin'. I'm gonna be numb. Okay. So, yeah, I consider 2015... So there you go. That was the 2014 reading tag. Is that what it's called? It is. Aw, I'm so proud of myself.